Yes, and we're live. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Going Beyond Your Comfort Zone. My name is Boss. I'm an executive mindset coach. I will be the host today. In these sessions, we do talk about going beyond your comfort zone, um, pivotal moments in life, how we deal with change, and what are we creating for the future. And I was just having a conversation with, like a pre-conversation with Maria, my guest here today from New Jersey, and she is an author. She's a speaker. She wrote the bestseller On the Rocks, which we're going to dive into in a moment. And we were just also talking a little bit about her nonprofit work. Maria, I'd just love to hear. I'd like to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself and tell people straight away where they can reach you, so that the beginners, the people that start watching from the beginning, know where to reach you, and that they don't have to go all the way to the end. They decide to need to go somewhere, or but just go ahead.
I love that because I'm a busy person too. So thank you so much, Bass. Thanks for having me on. This is just so much fun. I've just started to jump into the live world. It's great because we have a way to connect with people instantly. So those of you that are on the way to work on the East Coast, or maybe getting ready for work on the West Coast or in the Midwest in the United States, or maybe kind of finishing your day in Europe, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name, as Bass says, is Maria C. Palmer. I am the author of the best-selling award-winning book On the Rocks, which details the rise and fall of my father, who was an A-list restaurateur. His name is Joseph Costanzo Jr. He owned the Prima Donna restaurant in McKees Rocks, Pennsylvania, back during the 80s through the early 2000s. And I know what all of you are saying. I've never heard of McKees Rocks, Pennsylvania. Well, there's a good reason why you haven't. It's a suburb of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in the United States. And it's a really small, tiny city, and a city that most people just sort of pass through if they come to Pittsburgh. There would be really no reason to visit except if you're a local. Which kind of makes the story even more enticing that, back before the age of technology, you had this top 10 Italian restaurant tucked in this little small town of McKees Rocks, Pennsylvania, where most of the big players were, of course, in Paris and London and New York and Chicago, and of course, San Francisco as well, and Miami. Things were not normally happening in McKees Rocks, but it follows him buying this failing business and turning it into one of America's hot spots, and all of the struggles that came with that, the fame, the celebrities that visited us, the sports stars, the broadcasters, and then every story has a good hook, right? So ours kind of culminates with a knock on my door where the federal government were coming to look for my father because somebody had mentioned his name in a federal grand jury investigation, which led to a pretty invasive 3-year investigation, which he pled guilty to tax evasion charges. So lots of ups and downs about the book. And in life, we also have lots of ups and downs too. And as we were speaking just prior to jumping on this live, I do my 9 to 5 job is I actually work in the nonprofit world, and I work for an organization called St. Paul's Community Development Corporation in Paterson, New Jersey, which quite ironically is very similar in demographics to McKees Rocks, Pennsylvania. Both cities were really bustling during the post-World War II era, when many people were migrating from Europe and coming to the United States. Paterson really saw its glory in the Silk Age, and McKees Rocks, of course, with Pittsburgh in the Steel Age. And then when those industries moved out, things happened with both of those cities, and they became really vacant and lots of shady things started to happen in both of those places. So I'm really happy to be in Patterson and to be able to be the grant writer for this organization. And as I say, the nonprofit person of all trades. Sometimes I'm the janitor,
Hmm.
sometimes I'm the volunteer coordinator, sometimes I'm the ear for people to listen to, but I'm always here and I always show up because I have a passion to help people that I think need that hand up in life, not necessarily the hand out in life. And so that's a little bit about me and where you can follow me. You can follow me if you go to www.mariacpalmer, just as my name is printed here on the screen, MariaCPalmer.com. That's got a whole list of places of how you can get in touch with me. On my Facebook and Instagram, I'm at Joe Costanzo, Joecostanzo, prima donna, Primadonna. And on Twitter, Maria C. Palmer, and many other places too. So definitely stop by, give me a follow, send me a little note. This is why I do what I do, is because I love to hear from all of you. So thank you again, Bass, for having me. And that's my long-winded introduction. And I will be
Yeah,
quiet.
that's okay. No, no problem. No problem. Thank you for that. Let's dive into your book straight away because your story is quite remarkable. Um,
Thank you.
and as you said, that knock on the door is it's like one of those things you don't prepare for in life, I assume. Uh,
Mhm.
or at least most of us don't, and so I'm curious how that like knock on your door rocked your world, or what effect that had on you.
Sure. So, I just want to paint a picture of where I was mentally at that time and also kind of where my family was. So, when that knock at the door happened, we were at the highest high point that you could be at.
Hmm.
My dad had just won an international restaurant award called the Dorona Award. And at the time, it was the restaurateur award that you wanted to get because James Beard, which everybody knows of now, was just focused on chefs. So Bourdain and all of the greats, they were getting James Beard awards, but we were not eligible because we were a restaurant. My father was a restaurateur, but he was eligible for a Dorona Award. He had just gotten a Wine Spectator Award. We were riding very high. The restaurant never took any reservations. It was open from 4 to 11 on weekdays and every weekend except for Sundays. And people would line up on the streets at 3 o'clock to get a spot, and we were packed until 11 o'clock every night, seating people, serving people, and really not ending our day until after the bar shut down around 2 or 3 in the morning. So it was the highest high that you could possibly be on. My family was very well known in the area. My dad had ran for political office. He had a radio show. He was a columnist for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, which is the paper in Pittsburgh, the number one paper
Hmm.
in Pittsburgh. And so things were going very, very well for us. We had moved into a beautiful house, and, everything was just kind of very picturesque. And I was at Syracuse University at the time. My parents always instilled me with a very hard work ethic. So my summers were spent working a crazy amount of jobs. I think that summer I had 4 or 5 jobs, 2 internships, and then I always worked for my dad, of course. I worked as a lifeguard, and I was working also at a radio station or no, sorry. No, I was at an advertising agency that summer. Yes. So I was at a radio station the summer prior to that. But anyways, I was quite busy and I was at home in between jobs, and somebody knocked on my door. I ran to go get it, not thinking anything of it. It was two guys in suits flashing badges. I've watched plenty of movies that don't end well whenever that scenario is taking place. And whenever they were asking for my father, to be honest, I really didn't think it had anything to do with him. We knew a lot of people. And whenever I say a lot of people, the restaurant probably in the 18 years of business, 17, 18 years of business, had about 1 million people come through the doors. So we had people of all kinds. And my dad was really friends with people of all kinds. And so I thought maybe it was somebody that he knew that they had questions about. And honestly, that's what he thought too. And I called him and I said, "Hey, these guys are here. They're asking for you." And he said, "Oh, just send them down to the restaurant." Without anything, we sort of hung up. I did have a bad feeling in my stomach about that whole situation, but I was busy, so I had to move on to my next thing. And I knew there was something wrong, though, whenever I had called to the restaurant hours later and he wasn't picking up. I knew there was something that was just not quite right. What we had no idea about was there was this federal grand jury investigation, and basically somebody who was getting in trouble was asked if they could name somebody else that they thought would be a person of interest for law enforcement. And if they did, they would receive sort of some good time and be able to kind of steer away from going to prison. And so they did. And unfortunately, the name that they relayed was that of my father. And at that time, things have changed a lot since then. But at that time, the Clinton administration had passed a federal guidelines of mandatory minimums, which meant
Mhm.
that if
Oh, yeah,
some
yeah.
if somebody had done a specific crime to a specific intensity, there was a range in time that they had to serve prison time.
Mhm.
And that if your name is mentioned in a federal grand jury investigation, it's no longer a civil case. It's a criminal case, regardless of what is found and regardless of how less severe or more severe it is, it's automatically criminal. So we did try to do an offer and compromise with the government to pay them back with interest. They were not interested in that at all. What they were interested in and what they're very good at is convicting people at like a 99 point, I think 4% rate.
Mhm.
So if you pled guilty, your sentence in this case would have been 5 months, would have been the minimum sentence, to about 1.5 to 2 years, somewhere around there. If you pled not guilty and you were found guilty, I think you were starting at about a year and a half and potentially going up to like 5 years. And so it really made no sense to go against what was kind of written on the table. And my dad is really a man of principle and loyalty. So there was no way that he was going to say somebody else, to kind of get his get out of jail free card. That just wasn't going to happen because he knew the impact that that could have on another person,
Yeah.
because it had a significantly negative impact on us. And so he just chose to plead guilty and he cooperated with the authorities. He did receive the 5 months, was the least severe sentence. And, even whenever he was sentenced, the federal judge felt very bad. He was at at one point a customer of the restaurant too, and he said, "Joe, I think that you're an honorable man, and I think you're a
Uh-huh.
really bad bookkeeper. I think that that's really what it's about, but my hands are tied because there are these federal mandatory minimums that I just can't go around. So that's why you'll get the 5-month sentence, but, it breaks my heart that I have to do this, but I do." And from there, when you're 20 years old, because that's how old I was at the time, and somebody that's accustomed to anxiety is built into the fabric of what is me.
Uh-huh.
And I've learned to befriend it instead of fight it because guess what? It's never going to go away.
Yeah.
So, sent me into a pretty crazy tailspin. And I ended up moving 3,000 miles away to Los Angeles, California, because everybody knows if you have problems and then you just get on a plane, then the problems just stay where you left them, and then you can go and, leave, and then they never follow you, which of course that's a joke.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
certainly follow you.
Yeah.
But, trying to kind of recreate myself, I was at my lowest point whenever I was in California, and I used to tell people, somebody asked me one time, "What did you think other people thought of you at that time?" And I said, "Well,
Mhm.
I couldn't even make a decision for my life." Like, we would go, my boyfriend at the time, now husband, and I, we would go out to eat. And, I love restaurant is my comfort zone. That's where I grew up in. This is
Yeah.
the world that I know. If I would get a menu with too many choices, or the waitress would just start spouting off all of the options for specials, it was so overwhelming to me that I had to leave. I could not make any decisions on my own. It was just too much for me. And I kind of felt like other people knew whenever I walked down the street, if I opened my mouth to talk, I felt like people knew that there was something wrong with me. So, in most situations, I just would not open my mouth at that time. I would smile, I would be polite, I would kind of fake it till you make it, but I didn't really open up and have conversations with people because I couldn't handle that. I didn't know how to do that anymore, even though my entire life was learning how to do that growing up in the restaurant industry. It was just too painful for me.
I'm
Um,
curious. It's like, I mean, did you feel guilty, or did you
me
carry a guilt or a common guilt, or
Me personally, no, I didn't really feel guilty myself because
okay.
really I had done nothing wrong. I was 20 years old, just kind of living my school life. I think I just felt blindsided.
Okay.
I really didn't know, and I think my entire family felt really blindsided. Somebody, you know, asked my dad about it, in an interview one time, and what he had to say, I think, was really valuable. Whenever you grow up in a crime family, which we did not
Mhm.
at
Yeah.
all, but whenever you do, these are sort of the consequences to the choices that you make, right? So you're not shocked whenever your uncle or your cousin goes to prison. That's just all part of the landscape. But whenever that's not your makeup, and that was not our makeup, we were
Yeah.
just hardworking people
Yeah.
trying to make an American dream.
Mhm.
It really does something to your mind whenever something like this happens, because you are not expecting it, and it's certainly out of left field. And whenever something happens in your life, whether it's this or just, losing a job or losing a family member, or there's some kind of trauma that happens that's out of the blue, I think in our minds we start to go with, okay, well, I wasn't expecting this and this happened. So what's coming next?
Mhm.
And, how do I anticipate for the things that I've never anticipated for? And I think that that's what drives the go-kart for our anxiety. Because in life, sometimes we don't know what's coming next. And sometimes life does throw us curveballs, and we have to figure out a way to reground ourselves and reconnect ourselves even in those moments of utter chaos. Things like pausing, taking a moment to feel your feet on the ground, taking a deep breath in and out, taking a second with nature, talking to a friend, finding something that we can do that's going to put us back in a semblance of normal whenever things just don't make sense. And for so long, things just did not make sense. And it was very, very challenging for me, for sure.
Did did forgiveness play a part for you in this, in your story? Have you, is it complete for you, or you're able to forgive, or
Yeah.
is it like, yeah, how did that work for you?
I think forgiveness is the cornerstone to anything.
Mhm.
Not necessarily, we don't have to forget what happened or anything like that. And for me, it really wasn't the forgiveness of my father per se, because it was the situation that happened. I didn't feel like he had done anything to warrant my forgiveness. For me, it was trying to forgive the person that essentially put us through all of this. And what I've come up with, and it took me 17 years to write this book, and that's one of the reasons why it took me 17 years to write this book, is I had to come to grips with having a certain amount of empathy and understanding for things that I did not totally agree with or understand, and really kind of coming from the point of whatever happened likely did not have anything, or maybe it did, but I'm going to give the person the benefit of the doubt. It likely didn't have anything directly to do with my family or my father, just the representation of being able to get that person what they needed at that
Mhm.
time. So, I have to put it in perspective of, maybe this person was really going through a lot, and they really couldn't handle all of the pressure of the investigation, and they were pressured and they felt like they needed to say something or, take an easy road out. But now I'm sit here grateful, not that all of this happened, but grateful that there's a greater purpose to it. And I always joke with my dad and I said, the ultimate is now we've lived through this and we've gotten through this and we're on the other side of it. And being on the other side of it and going through something like this, you don't have this unless you go through something like that.
Yes.
If your story is all sunshine and rainbows, if, you get into a business, it just blows up, you're the hottest person in the country, everything goes well for you, everything that you touch is gold, nobody really wants to read about that because it's not reality. It's not human. Oftentimes I say, Facebook, social media, we're on here right now. They're great tools. They really are great tools, but they're not necessarily somebody's truly authentic self, right? Because whenever you're putting yourself out there, you're putting out the best pieces of your life, right? Well, very few people, maybe some people, if you're having an awful day, are putting everything out there. So we're only seeing the side of the tale that you might want to tell, but there's a lot more to the person. And, I say now that we're looking back on all of these struggles, first of all, it allowed us to write this book. And second of all, it's allowed so many more people to connect with this story because it is one of humanity. It is one where we don't cover anything up. We talk about everything, including the mistakes that were made. And I think people can get that. And I think that the authenticity of it is what kind of keeps people coming back to the story. I think that that's why we have been so fortunate to do so well with sales and to be recognized in so many media outlets and have so many awards behind our name. I think it's telling that true story with all of the grit, packaged up for people to sort of unravel for themselves and to be able to relate to it. And I think, I've gotten a couple of emails and conversations from people that have just said, thank you for being willing to put yourself out there. I've been going through a really challenging time in my life or with a family member, and hearing your story has helped me to see that, first of all, it's not going to last forever, and second of all, we can move on from our worst moments. Nobody should be judged by their worst mistake in life. It's what you do about it. It's how you pick up your bootstraps and you trudge through the mud when it feels like quicksand. That's your character. That's who you are, not a mistake that you make. I make mistakes every day. Yesterday, I made a
Yes.
mistake. I left my purse. I left my purse 30
Yeah.
minutes away from my house. Just left it. I had
Uh-huh.
like, what an airhead thing to do, right? So I had to drive back and
Uh,
put my tail between my legs and do it. We all make mistakes. We're all human. But if I let that particular narrative uh, monopolize on my day, then it would have been an awful day. But you know what? So many other wonderful things happened yesterday that were beautiful, that were enriching to me. And so what? So what? I left my purse. Okay, it happens. Like, do I wish that it didn't? Yeah, but there's nothing I can do about it. So I just go and get it and move on with my day. And I think that that's how we all need to see ourselves, and we all need to treat ourselves. It's like, what are you so what? So what are you going to do next? This happened to you. What's next? How are you going to rewrite your narrative for the next chapter of life, knowing that you can't change the past chapter?
no. So you wrote. You just said that you wrote this book. It took you 17 years to write this book.
Yes.
And I mean, of course, you can't go back in time. But would you have wished, like, if you could, that you would have written this book like 12 years ago?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
But also the timing of everything at this particular point is impeccable. So for the first 10 years, it was just me and my dad on the phone. Little vignettes. I would say, hey, tell me about a time that a celebrity came into the restaurant. And
Hmm.
he'd say, oh, did I tell you about the time that Jamie Lee Curtis came in and she was doing some stuff at Children's Hospital? No, tell me about that. Or tell me about a time that something really crazy happened. And then he would go on and on and on. So that's really how it started. Where it went, I'm really lucky. I have a wonderful co author named Ruthie Dines Robbins, who was my former AP English teacher in high school. And she and I have so many 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, it's not even funny. So she, grew up right on the street over from where the prima donna once sat. She
Okay.
was one of the first customers at the restaurant whenever we were serving 10 dinners a night. Her sons are really the same age, that I am, and actually she's the exact same age as my dad, almost to the day. And so we were close growing up and we were always friends. And interestingly enough, her oldest son moved to Los Angeles right around the same time that I did. So we always had a connection. Whenever she would come out, we'd go out to eat, we'd hang out. And she knew that I was working on this project. And she had recently relocated to Buffalo and was working with a writers group of published authors. And she had asked me if she could bring some of the vignettes that I had worked on with my dad to the writers group just to get their opinion. And they agreed on two things. The first thing is that the book needed a whole lot of work, which I knew.
Uh-huh.
And the second thing is that it had a lot of commercial potential, which I always felt. And so it was really from then on that Ruthie and I worked diligently for about 7 years together, back and forth. Somebody in the writing group had suggested that originally I had the book partially in my voice and partially in my dad's voice. So we would alternate chapters, kind of very matrixy, but it didn't really work. And so they had agreed that there was one voice screaming through, and that was the voice of my dad. And so Ruthie and I are two females, and we write in the first person narrative perspective of my dad. So we
Okay.
actually become my dad in the story.
Uh-huh.
And if we've done our job well, whenever you read this, you'll feel like you're sitting at the bar rail with my dad behind the bar and he's telling you stories. And I think that that's another reason why we've gotten a lot of critical acclaim, because this is a memoir and a narrative nonfiction, but it's written in a very different way. Most are written from the perspective of the author. It's rare to have the perspective of the subject be the not only the protagonist, but also the narrator of the story. So it was a really fun time. We finished our manuscript right around the time that is possibly the worst time to finish a manuscript, which was the summer of 2020. We had a little global pandemic that was happening, and every single person in the universe was writing a book. So you can imagine how
Yeah.
fantastic that was to shop a book then. And
Uh-huh.
not only that, I mean, everybody had warned me going in. They said, you're a first time author. If you have a piece of fiction, it's much better to pass that piece first than to do narrative nonfiction, because narrative nonfiction requires a full edited manuscript as well as a full book proposal as your marketing plan. And you're also competing against all of the politicians, all of the celebrities, and all of the reality stars who really have a hard time spelling their name, but they get book deals like constantly. So go figure that. So yeah, it was not a great time to launch this book, but again, nothing in life happens at the most opportune times. We had 8 beta readers over the summer, which were fantastic. I'll shout 2 people out who were my toughest critics. My first was one of my best friends from college, Dave Paratano. I love him, and he ripped the book to shreds. And equally, my husband, Joe Palmer, also worked in the film industry for many years, and he helped us to see what drove the narrative forward. And he was completely influential about what we needed to keep, what needed to be cut. And really, I thank all of my beta readers. They were all amazing. But in particular, the 2 that were the toughest really, I think, made the greatest impact on what the book is now, because they were brave enough to tell me that it sucked at that time. And then we shopped it. We went out to agents in the early winter and late fall of 2020, 2021. Had no luck. Just a shout out to people that are trying to make it in the creative field. It's not easy. And if you rely on other people to tell you yes or to tell you good job, you're going to be sitting and waiting for a long time, because that's not how things work. Most people are going to tell you no. Some people might laugh at you. Some people might even yell at you. I had one agent, he was absolutely crazy. I paid to pitch him, and
Mhm.
he stopped me one line in and said, "Is this some sort of joke?" Like, this is ridiculous. I was like, no, I'm being very serious right now. And yeah, it didn't happen. But 265 query letters to agents, 140 of them completely ghosted us, didn't say
Uh-huh.
one word back. Over 100 said thanks, but no thanks. And 17 requested more information. And my top agent ended up offering us at the time. And, same thing for the publishing world. We went on submission in the fall of 2021. We did
How
not
mu
get picked
how
up.
I just want just a question. How often did you wanna hide under a blanket and was like, "I'm just gonna give off on gonna give up on this project."
A
Like, every
lot, a
credit
lot, like
I
almost
like to do these agents, and then it takes you 7 years. I mean,
yes.
what kept you going?
Honestly, my dad, it was always his dream to have a book or to have a movie made about his life, because his life is that interesting.
Mm,
And he was very ill at the time, very, very ill. He had major open heart surgery, major back surgery, 2 kidney transplants, one that failed. Another one that, thank goodness, has taken, but he was in a coma for a medically induced coma for a week because he had a bad drug reaction after the transplant. So he was not well, and I knew that I had to get this out sooner or later. And that's what kept on driving me, is the fact that this was something that really excited him.
Mhm.
And, I knew that it was something you cannot describe sometimes the intangibles of success, but I knew deep down in my heart. And I think that, my publisher and my agent eventually got it, right? Because they drank my Kool-Aid. But other people were very skeptical, and they said, this is just a regional story. Nobody that's not been to this restaurant would be interested in this book. Um, and I really beg to disagree, because I think the overall themes, yes, this is about a restaurant. And if you're a foodie, yeah, you're going to like it. If you worked in the restaurant industry, this is raw. We don't sugarcoat things. This is not a book that was made for today. This was how things were in the 80s and 90s. And we just tell you how it is. So if you want to know what the restaurant industry was like back then, this is your book. This is your book, because we don't sugarcoat anything. But,
I used to work in a restaurant in the 90s, and and it
yeah,
was
you're laughing, and if you know, you know. It was it was not an environment that you would just go away for with this like cushy feeling. It's fast paced. It's crazy. Sometimes things happen and you're like, I don't even believe that this is happening. But it's just how it was back then. And I think that, we've lost something, definitely in the hospitality industry now. I 100% think that, yeah, there are those solid gems out there of independent operators that are still crushing it. But all of these chains, and honestly, nobody cares about customer service anymore. They could care less. I've been to restaurants where nobody even acknowledges you. You're sitting there for 30 minutes at your table. You're making eye contact with your server. Nobody even acknowledges you. And then whenever you say, well, okay, I'm going to go because nobody even came by in the last 30 minutes. They're like, "Oh, okay. Well, better luck next time." What? Are you freaking kidding me? Like, it was such a, people ask me what it was like, and it was like attending a Broadway performance with food. We would all kind of communicate with body language, and where one person was dropping something off, another person was refilling the waters and resetting the table, and it was just this delicate balance of a dance that if we were doing our job right, you didn't even know that all of this was happening. It was just so well choreographed. And I think we've lost that art of customer service. I really do. But
Do you
that's a
miss it?
conversation for another day, right?
Yeah.
I
Do you
do
miss
miss it. I miss it a lot, and I think my dad misses it a lot. But what's really cool is now we're getting the ability to relive it without having the actual restaurant, because we go on tour. We talk to people like you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We're in the media kind of reliving our best moments. And I'm also getting an opportunity to do a lot of cook and book events where I do hands-on Italian cooking classes. And then we have a book discussion, a public Q&A, and a book signing. And I just did one in New Jersey. I'm doing one in Orlando, Florida on January 11th. And I'm also doing one in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on January 20th. So these are really cool ways where we still kind of feel like we're tapped in to the hospitality field, but we don't have to run that brick and mortar business that neither of us really have time for at this particular moment, or the space for. So it's cool. It's cool. It was a really great way to grow up.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I loved the restaurant business. It taught me so many lessons in career, in my career, and in service and in attitude. It's beyond. But I think it's. I mean, I haven't worked in a restaurant for 25 years, so I'm not saying I don't know what it's like right now. But I had a great time. Um, I have another question. When there's I mean beyond like your writing and your speaking, which we didn't even discuss. There's your nonprofit work, and like one of the things that you said in the pre-conversation, um, was that you had this service night, and that people that volunteer for you gave up their prom to come to your to the service night. And I thought that was such a beautiful thing. I mean, prom doesn't, I mean, that I know that's a very American thing. It's not so much a European thing, although we're trying to copy it. But um yeah, so I was wondering, just like if you've ever done something yourself like that, where you made that choice, or let's say a not so obvious choice, or maybe you haven't.
Yeah, whenever I did so the service night, which you're referring
Yeah.
to, it happens the 3rd Friday of every month. I work for a nonprofit called St. Paul's Community Development Corporation, and we bring programs and services to people that need them most. Oh my goodness, how fun. Hey, Kathy. We bring programs and services to the people who need them most. And every 3rd Friday of the month at 6:30, we gather at St. Albans Episcopal Church in Oakland, New Jersey, and we make 60 sandwiches for the men's shelter at the SPCDC. And afterwards, we share some fellowship and a pizza dinner, and it has just become so much fun. And it's such a nice group of people that do this. And sometimes, we have 25 people. Sometimes we have like 100 people. I never know. I put it out there. I ask people to RSVP. They don't always, but you know what? We make it work, and we just sort of go with the chaos, and we love it. Um, and I would say in my own life, one thing that I did do that I have no regrets about doing is that my mom was taking a trip with her family, and they were going to Ocean City, Maryland, which was a place that we always vacationed whenever we were younger. And so many wonderful memories and awesome times there in Ocean City with my cousins and my grandparents. And I had just decided for some reason, I think I was in high school or about to enter high school, I just decided to stay with my dad's mom and not go on vacation, and to, live with her for a few days. And it was one of the most beautiful experiences that I can remember, because we didn't have anything. My grandmother was very beautiful woman, but very humble beginnings. She was an immigrant from Italy. She came over whenever she was 7 years old, and really no pomp and circumstance around her, just salt of the earth, really good person. And, she didn't, like today, if somebody's going away and kids are staying with me, it's like, all right, we got to program them. We got to take them to the zoo. We got to go to the movies. We got to do this. We got to have a play date. We got to set this up. We got to run them around in a field. And now we're going to go out in a boat, and then we're going to teach them how to surf. No, it really wasn't like that. Like whenever you went over to my grandmother's, you just did whatever she did, and she loved to cook. So I would watch her cook. I wasn't allowed to help because you never mess with an Italian woman in a kitchen. I was allowed to watch and sometimes ask questions on occasion, and always give a little taste test. But it was just really the coolest week. We just hung out. You know, I slept in. She made me breakfast. She, kind of, we figured out what we were going to do for the day, if she was going to go to the grocery store. It was just a really nice time. And yes, "Hey, Tim, how you doing?" It's one of my dad's very good friends. And it just was a wonderful memory of mine, and like I said, nothing happened that was firework, but so much happened over that week that was just so cool to spend time with somebody that I love so much. I'll always treasure that for sure.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing that. Um, yeah, the conversation is about comfort zone, like how we resist change and what we're creating for a future. I think we I haven't really followed the order of the
Okay.
conversation, but that's I mean I love having the conversation with you, and the direction
Oh,
it's
thank
going.
you.
So yeah, I mean, when you talk about when you look at like change, how did you like worked yourself through all this change and even the change that is going on right now, with like doing all these like book presentations, all these interviews. Is that's I mean, um wanting to tell a story is one thing, but then you have to tell a story about the book out there. How
Sure.
how is that for you?
It's really fantastic, but my life is absolutely crazy. So, between this household is just if I guess if I had to describe it in one word, it would be chaotic.
Uh-huh.
It's very busy. So, my husband and I both work incredibly hard. My husband is in a family business, and
Mhm.
he does a lot of travel for that business. And then obviously I have the book going on, so I do a lot of travel. He mostly travels during the week. I mostly travel on the weekend. We have two young children, and we're both incredibly involved in our community too. I'm the Girl Scout leader for both of my kids' Girl Scout troop, in addition to the grade that is sort of sandwiched in between them. I have one girl that's in third grade, one that's in fifth grade. I have a bunch of kids that are also in fourth grade that are part of my one Girl Scout troop. I volunteer a lot with the school. And then, on top of my own nonprofit work, as I had shared earlier, right now I'm kind of knee deep in my studio here, and
Mhm.
my basement is half used for interviews like this, and then the other half of it is Santa's workshop. So I do a holiday gift program for the children of Passaic County and Greater Paterson, New Jersey. We service probably this year about 250 kids with anywhere between 1,400 to 2,000 Christmas presents and holiday gifts that parents are requesting. And it's a really truly need based program. It'll likely be the only presents that these kids get for the holidays. So I'm seeped into that because I work with all of the donors and our wonderful volunteers and sponsors and companies that have been so generous. And a couple of Santa Clauses. It's cool. I know there's a Santa Claus on the West Coast, and then there's a Santa Claus on the East Coast. They don't like their names to be mentioned, but they know who they are. And I'm very, very grateful to them every year for being able to never say no. And I don't say no, and I think that that's part of everybody has a tragic flaw, right? So I think that that's my tragic flaw is that I don't say no. But where I'm learning and where I'm growing is that I only say yes to things that I wanna say yes to. So although I rarely say no to things, that I'm passionate about, if it does not suit me 100%, I do have no problem saying, "Thanks so much, but this is not where I'm at right now," or I don't have any time in my schedule. So I always tell friends and family members, if I tell you yes, it means I wanna do it. If I tell you no, I'm just gonna tell you no because
Mhm.
my schedule is so tight. And I think that that's if we could have a magic genie to grant one wish, it would be a little bit more hours in the day and maybe a couple more of me, because my schedule is busy starting at like 6 in the morning And sometimes if my husband's traveling, sometimes I'm up until 1 or 2 in the morning working or running events, either for the nonprofit or traveling, speaking, being, on the media, as you know, because you're in Europe. Baz, Europe starts a lot earlier. So sometimes I'm on interviews in Europe as early as like 4 or 5 in the morning.
I
Um,
wouldn't do that to you.
yeah, California is late, so sometimes I could be on interviews there at 11 or 12 o'clock in the evening. So it's busy, but you know what? I wouldn't change it for the world. I'm having so much fun, and to see the life that it's breathed into my dad. And I know that there are a couple of people that follow me on Facebook that are on right now, and a couple of very good friends of my dad. There's been a transformation in him. And, the past 20 years have been very hard on him, both health wise and also losing his business. But now he wakes up feeling energized. It's awesome. Like every day is something new and an adventure. And sometimes we know what we're getting into, and other times we have no idea. Like the other night, I just popped on LinkedIn and I look and I'm tagged in an article, and where the author had tagged me. So I go onto the page and I find out it's through Forbes magazine. Forbes magazine mentioned our book as one of the 6 books for the holidays for a person who has an entrepreneurial spirit. And we were named as the first book. I had no idea that that was going to happen, but it's like when you throw yourself out there, whenever you show up as your authentic you 100% of the time, which that's what I am. This is who I am. If I'm at a PTO meeting, this is who I am. If I'm at service night, this is who I am. If I'm on an international interview, that's just how it is. And, I don't have to mask who I am anymore. I am not ashamed about anything that has happened in our life. I'm proud of my family. I love my family. I think that, mistakes happen in life, but we get past those and move beyond those. And I just feel so grateful and blessed that people are taking this book in the way that they are. I mean, I'm on with you. You're in Morocco. And you're from the Netherlands. Like, how does it even happen? I've never even been to Morocco, but here we are. So this is what
I've never
happens.
been to Patterson.
Never, man. Hey, you should
I've been
come.
close, but not, I haven't been there. But I have a question. It's maybe a mean question.
All right, whatever.
It's
I
like,
got it. I got an answer. I can take a mean
okay, good.
question.
I mean, we started the conversation with the knock on the door, and a knock you don't expect. Would you like to have another knock on your door to be able to write another book?
No.
Yes.
No. No more knocks, please.
No.
As my mom said, after this happened, she told my dad, "I want you to be boring for the next 20 years." And he was. He was really boring for the next 20 years, although he kept us on his toes with his health situations.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I like living the suburban life. Now I don't need to be put in the line of fire. I have enough. Billy Joel sings a song, and gosh, how do the lyrics go right now? It's on the tip of my tongue, but it's like if we broke up today, there would still be music to write.
Yeah.
And I feel like that. I already have another book that I'm working on right now, that I have not shopped, and I probably will not shop for a while because this is just really, really hard work with this book,
Okay.
as far as touring for it. But I've got that in the pipeline. It talks about that knock at the door through me meeting this like crazy gambling swearing nun who I just love dearly, who's changing the world. She started a new nonprofit, Sister Suzanne Jabro, at age 75, because she believes so much in shepherding those who need shepherding. And she is just a spitfire, has the exact same personality as my dad, but she's a nun. Go figure on that one. and I became the director of her organization. I thought whenever I was becoming the director that I was going to help change all of these people's lives. That's definitely not what happened at all. What actually happened is they helped to change me, and they helped to teach me things about love and forgiveness and what it meant to be part of a greater community and family, and all of these resiliency, all of these intangibles that, as my dad always said at the restaurant, we're not just teaching you about restaurants here, we're teaching you about life. And that's what was happening. So I have that story that I'm working on.
Is
Again,
that
it's
is
not
that
out.
like when the student is ready, the teacher appears?
Yeah, that's what my dad always says. My dad said, "You were the student for so long and now you're the teacher." Now whenever we're on media interviews, it's you that's shining, not necessarily me. And I'm like, no, I don't know so much about that. I follow in your footsteps, and you lead me to where I need to go, and he's always done that for me, which is really truly a beautiful thing. And people have been nudging me also for maybe a potential cookbook as a follow-up for some prima donna recipes. So I don't know. I don't know where life is going to take me next, but I have an open mind and an open heart, and I just go to the light. I go to the energy. If I feel like something is right for me at the moment, then that's what I do. You got to capitalize on the moment. And that's what I'll continue to do. So I think lots of good stuff ahead. I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, that's where I am right now. No more knocks. No more knocks.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Life, but unfortunately, life will throw curveballs at you. But I mean, what I saw was like, I mean, your father was his award-winning restaurant owner. You the award-winning author. So something good is being channeled here, which is beautiful. Yeah, to round it up, I mean, I could talk to you for another hour or
I
two. It doesn't
know. I
matter.
know. The time
Uh,
goes by so quickly, but these
yeah,
poor audience members, they're like, when is this girl gonna stop talking? Gotta get to work.
you kind of like you kind of set what you're creating for your future with maybe a new book, a cookbook, some of the um, oh, I'm lost the word. Um, the nonprofit
Nonprofit
stuff you're
stuff.
doing.
Yeah,
Yeah, sorry.
yeah. Okay.
Anything else you want to share that you want to create or want to reach out for to people? Uh, Feel free to once again mention where people can reach you.
Sure.
Anything.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll kind of just leave this on, a positive note and say that what has been so awesome for us, and we're grateful to everybody that follows us and continues to follow us. And if you pick up a copy of the book, it's a great holiday gift, and if you like it, please do review us on Amazon and Goodreads, because really it helps us little guys compete with some of the bigger guys. That's why I'm here, for sure. It's not because, everything sort of happens overnight. It's because people have spoken, and I need people to kind of continue to speak up. So I'll just end with saying that no matter what hardship you're going through in life, please know that you can always take your own pen back, and you can always write what is next for you. And, for so long, people knew what happened to my dad, but they didn't know why. And this is why it happened. And we all have the right to tell our side of the story, which is exactly what we did. And as far as following me, again, you can reach me on www.mariacpalmer.com. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram at Joe Costanzo. That's JoeCostanzo, Prima Donna, PrimaDonna. I'm on Twitter at Maria C. Palmer. Sometimes I pop on Clubhouse, very rarely though, because Clubhouse has changed a lot. And it's hard to navigate. And, this old dog, as my kids say, that might have lived in the dinosaur days. So this old
Uh,
dog has trouble learning new technological tricks. So but anyways, definitely shoot me a line. Come to an event. We have a really cool virtual event that's happening actually this coming Thursday, 1 week from today on December 14th through the Parkinson's Foundation of Western Pennsylvania. It's on my website under the events tab. You can register. It's a free event. I'm going to be on and we're going to be doing a live reading from the book. We'll do audience Q&A. So if you're dying to know something, please do pop on. Or if you just want to say hi, we would love to have you. It's going to be from 4:30 Eastern Standard Time to 6 p.m. I'll be on then. I also have lots of events coming up. I have an event in Orlando on January the 11th that I have not yet announced. So surprise, I will be doing a cook and book in Orlando. Then potentially something also in Fort Myers. I'm waiting to hear back from that. January 20th, I'll be in Pittsburgh at High Street Studios for another cook and book, which is an excellent holiday gift. Just saying. And, we'll be around. I'll be in New York City, I think, at the end of January, Oakland, New Jersey in February, Warwick, New York in April. So I'm starting to book up and a potential restaurant event in Bristol, Rhode Island. So we got a lot on the plate. So definitely I keep everything up to date. I definitely post all of my interviews on there too. So if you feel like you haven't gotten enough of me in the last hour, you can get some more and just pop on to the media clips and see what's going on. And yeah, that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Maria. It was wonderful
Thank
to have
you.
you. I'll close it off. It's like you indeed have the power to you start with a blank page every day. You get to create your story, whatever happened yesterday or years ago. You have the right to tell your story. Um, yeah. Thank you. I want to thank the listeners, the watchers. I will be here next week with a different guest, with a different conversation, going beyond your comfort zone. Uh, Thank you, Maria. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
viewers, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you. Thanks, Bass. Thanks, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Bye.
Bye.